A very, very good afternoon and a warm welcome to everyone over here. I, Dr. Rupal Shroff, on behalf of Thakur College of Science and Commerce, welcome everyone to this inspiring and enriching webinar on Reflect, Reboot, Recreate, and Be Relevant for Tomorrow. A very warm welcome to our distinguished guest, Mr. Ramesh Iyer. I also welcome all the participant delegates to this motivating session, which is giving us a corporate perspective to reboot our economy. So, before we begin, I would like to introduce us to you. So, we are a part of the Youth Thakur Educational Group, whose primary focus is to cater to the educational needs of the youth. This group has almost 19 institutions catering to around 47,000 students in varied faculties of education, starting from kindergarten to professional and postgraduate careers. We here at Thakur College of Science and Commerce, with a huge campus space of 1.81 acres, look into science, commerce, arts, undergraduate programs, and a few postgraduate programs. We are affiliated with University of Mumbai and awarded the autonomy status last year, are one of the largest unaided institutions in Maharashtra, and we have glorious achievements to our credit, specifically in the field of academics, sports, and co-curricular activities. Comparatively, we are really a young institute since established only in 1992, but have completed the academic requirements of NAC certification with A grade. So we are also very proud to be awarded the Best College Award for the academic year 18-19 by University of Mumbai. We have been featured in various magazines at the top positions, namely, to name a few, Edupreneurs by the Times Group and by the Education World magazine too. So it is really a pride. And the way that theme of the webinar goes, we also look into our students like this, because we reflect, that is, we study the feedback from our old students, we reboot, we prepare for a new beginning, we recreate, we design new programs and new courses for our students, and we are trying our best to be more relevant each day by preparing them for the corporate world. So this is all about our college, and I welcome you and for this seminar today. May I please welcome our principal ma'am, who's been the guiding force behind for the formal welcome address.
Thank you, Rupal. Yeah. Thank you, Rupal. It was wonderful hearing to you once again. Yeah. So good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the esteemed gathering. As a principal of Thakur College of Science and Commerce, it is indeed an honor and privilege to host this webinar on Reflect, Rebook, Recreate, and Be Relevant for Tomorrow. I welcome our eminent speaker on board, Mr. Ramesh Iyer, dynamic leader and charismatic personality, esteemed delegates, participants from across the world, and dear students. It is a momentous occasion for the college to organize yet another interacting session in the, sorry, another interacting session in this lockdown times, continuing our pursuit to academic excellence. The session looks very interesting as it gives a way forward, a hope of positivity to the future. We are all stressed out sitting at home. So we thought earlier that sitting at home would be very relaxing. It is other way around. We are working all round, but still we are very stressed up. We want to come out, we want to meet people, we want to see the student face, we want to see the faces of the colleagues. Times of turbulence provoke greatest ideas and opportunities. You cannot solve a problem with the same thinking that created it. The global COVID-19 pandemic is exacting a terrible human toll and menacing the world economy. The impact of coronavirus is being felt by all businesses around the world. Leaders are navigating a broad range of interrelated issues that span from keeping their employees and customers safe shoring up cash and liquidity, reorienting operations, and navigating complicated government support programs. A number of young startups have been impacted as funding has fallen. In India, up to 53% of businesses have specified a certain amount of impact of shutdowns caused by COVID-19 on operations. The unemployment rate has increased nearly 19%. The Indian economy is expected to lose over rupees 32,000 crore. That means US dollar 4.5 billion every day. India's GDP growth is negatively impacted. Oil prices and demand has dropped sharply. Farmers could not harvest their crop in the past month, and 60% of those who did harvest reported a huge loss. Stock markets in India post worst losses in history. But like it is stated in Mahabharata, विद्वान के बाद ही नव निर्वाण होता है. And we can see our government also who is trying to work out with and making our country Atmanirbhar. People have started investing in relationship, innovations and entrepreneurships are likely to rise. Changing lifestyle and better hygiene is the new trend. It is easy to lose your hopes and brood over the negative side effects of any event, especially when, as a community, we are battling of a global pandemic. And here I see the stress part which we all are suffering, whether it is our old parents who cannot go out, whether we working people, and I believe my students too. So here we have with us Mr. Ramesh Iyer. He has no presentation, but he's a charismatic speaker, and he will, at the end of the session, I'm very sure you will carry a lot of hopes in life, because hope is what makes us live. Thank you very much. And again, I welcome Mr. Iyer, Mr. Ramesh Iyer, to be with us. He's always been with us, has been with us, and we look forward to his today's session as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Principal Ma'am. That was really motivating. Without wasting further time, can we invite Dr. Parul Singhal, the Dean of Degree Commerce, to introduce to us?
My only request is keep it as short as you can. People can Google. People can Google me.
I actually wanted, I wanted to read it because from a simple BCom graduate, you started your career and you went up to Harvard University, which I want my students to know it. And it's only because of your hard work, sincerity, truthfulness, and loyal to the institution where you work made you, sir, reach to the pinnacle of success, sir. This is what my students should know, that how a man can grow slowly well. I wish Parul could just reflect all those little points.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes.
Although sir does not need any formal introduction, I'm sure his name rings a bell to everybody, and everybody just reflects on his charisma and the leader he is. But I'll try to justify the responsibility which is given to me, and also try to justify my role in the limited time I have to introduce him to the August gathering. Please allow me, sir. Mr. Ramesh Iyer is Vice Principal and MD of Mahindra & Mahindra Financial Services.
Vice Chairman.
He is President, Financial Services Sector and member of Group Executive Board of NMM Limited. Mr. Iyer's key mandate in Mahindra Group is to drive inclusive growth, aligned to the group's belief of driving rural prosperity. He's been instrumental in building Mahindra & Mahindra Finance since 1994. Mr. Iyer manages financial sector of Mahindra Group with 78,000 crores of net worth, 17,000 plus branches, and 30,000 people. Sir is also a director on board of directorship of 7 Mahindra Group companies. He's closely involved in development of country's dynamic financial services sector. He's chairman of FIDC and CII, Western Region Task Force Committee on Human Resource, and co-chairs NBFC Committee of IMC. Also an active member of committees like CII National Committee of Financial Inclusion, Leadership in HR, Banking and Financial Committees of Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and Task Force of MBFC of FICCI. Mr. Iyer is advisory to various educational groups like IIT Bombay, Washington University, Vidya Alankar Institute of Technology, V School, Will College at all. Sir is a recipient of many awards. Some of them are Best CEO Financial Sector Award, Midcap, Most Admired Rural Entrepreneur of the Year by Rural Marketing Forum in Awards, CEO Financial Services by CEO Magazine. He's also been featured in Business Today magazine Top 40 BFSI CEOs 2015. On a personal front, he is very fond of singing, reading, music. He loves bhajans as is an ardent devotee of Sai Baba. Sir, please, we welcome you today to the Today session, and I hope it comes up with a lot of inspiration to our young students, which leads the world growth to the new heights. Thank you, Rupal ma'am. Over to you, sir.
All right. Can I make a beginning?
Yeah, sure, sir, definitely.
My request is if people can be on mute, otherwise there's a lot of echoing happening. So it becomes difficult to communicate in a WebEx if people are not on mute.
Yeah.
Thank you so much and good afternoon to everyone participating through the WebEx, and thank you for inviting me for this little talk. Honestly, these are very unprecedented times, and the winner is going to be who accepts this as a reality rather than counters this to be saying nothing wrong. I think we all must learn to accept reality. What is surprising to me is, everyone is saying, oh, this COVID has come and disrupted everything. But honestly speaking, over the years, whatever strategy session we have been into, or for that matter, any training programs anybody must have been into, there was always one fact which was said, that disruption could come from a very unknown area and it could disrupt your business. So why are we so worried about this disruption? It has come from an unknown area. It has come from a very unknown zone and it has come and disrupted you. Therefore, the fundamental reason or the fundamental answer for why we are all worried is, while we believed that something disruptive will happen from wherever, but we never prepared ourselves. And which is why we are all struggling. If we had taken that comment, which was made many, many years and in all strategy session very seriously, not knowing that COVID will come, but definitely we would have been prepared for a disruption from an unknown zone. And if we had prepared ourselves, we would not be as worried as we are all today. So therefore, my first comment is, whenever we come across any such happening or any such comment made or any such realization, for heaven's sake, capture that and reflect on it. Why are we making that statement, right? So my first comment is, please reflect on what business are you in? Please reflect on what kind of an institution are you running? Please reflect on what kind of people are you built and create around you? Please reflect on what kind of process are you adhering to? Please reflect on what are your practices. Please reflect on how much do you know about your consumer. Please reflect on what kind of product are you making and marketing. Please reflect on who your competition is. So this is nothing new, right? You have to reflect on all of this. What typically happens is we ignore all of this when the going is good and we get stuck when the going becomes difficult. So the first requirement is that we have to go deeper and deeper and deeper. I think these are times to really do a very detailed insighting of your consumer. And believe in me, you will be shocked when you now go deeper and understand your consumer. You will be put to test and you will know how much you did not know. We all believe to know our consumers extremely well. I mean, if I have to take your institution as an example, I think most of us as professors, as principal, as teacher, we do sometimes believe we know our students extremely well. But there are some situations that you get into when you actually are interacting with students very closely. You realize, how did we miss this? So I think there is a need to kind of continuously reflect on what we do and go deeper and deeper to understand as to, is it the right way of doing it? Are we doing it for the benefit of the ultimate consumer? I think please always keep in mind The consumer has to be at the center of everything. Whether it's an education institute, whether it is a commercial institute, for that matter, whether even it's a religious institution. I think you have to define your consumer extremely well, and you have to keep the consumer at the center of everything. And I very strongly believe that we've been talking too long for customer centricity. I think a time has come to move away from customer centricity and move towards customer experience. I think customer centricity is a transaction. And here is a possible example. Suppose you're traveling in a flight and you have asked for a special meal and they have failed to load that special meal for you. And when they serve that meal to you, you say, this is not what I asked for. Immediately a air hostess comes, she gives you a chocolate, she gives you something else. If there is a kid with you, they give you a toy to the kid. That is customer centricity because they're trying to wriggle out of that problem that they have got into, and they're very transactionally handling it. Customer experiences, if they have once gone into this problem of serving a wrong meal to somebody, they must take it as a strong insight or an input and must put a process around it to say, never will this ever repeat. So that you don't have to once again face a similar problem or an embarrassment. So my request would be, when you reflect on why you're doing certain things a certain way, please try to move away from just being customer centric to providing customer experience, because that's little broad based. So if you try and do customer experience, then you will have a bigger opportunity at the marketplace, because then the customer gets attracted to you. Because in a customer centric program, many times what happens, that I as a customer definitely do get the benefit, but am I your true ambassador? I may go out and start the story as follows. I was traveling by an airline and they did not serve me the right food. And to cover it up, they gave me all these freebies. That's not a great marketing for you, right? But if a customer experience person speaks for you at the marketplace, then he actually narrates only the good story. He says, here is a company, I first got engaged with them, and the kind of experience that they have given me all through my lifestyle with them is something phenomenal that I would like to repeat with them as many times as possible. So when a customer experience person speaks to another consumer likely to be, he is actually creating certain instigation in him to ask more questions. He creates inquisitiveness in him to ask more questions. And that inquisitiveness actually creates a larger market for you. So when you are reflecting in this situation, when all of us are sitting at home, I don't believe that this is a great format that we should sit at home and work. I think we are not able to see people emotions. We are not able to understand people body language, and we are taking certain emotional decisions, and I'm not too sure they are going the right way. Especially when you're taking HR-based decisions, like every company is talking of reducing salaries and things like that, or cost reduction program, and that's all being taken in a very disconnected manner. And how will it all impact employee is not being seen. You're not able to interact with people and tell them this is what I'm going to do, and feel for yourself their body language, feel for yourself their emotions. So my dear friends, I would very strongly urge that when we are all sitting at home and working, reflect upon what are the things I should be doing when I go back, and I should be doing it differently. Believe in me, there are certain fundamentals to businesses. Whatever be the situation, whenever be such situations emerging, wherever such situation emerges, those fundamentals don't change. And what are those basic fundamentals? The top of the order on that would be governance and ethical practices. That would never ever in life change if your business is built on those models. It doesn't matter the disruption has come from where. So believe in me, start putting down when you sit at home and reflect for yourself. And it is not necessary that this is applicable only to business houses or businesses. It is applicable to individuals. You have to ask yourself a question. I am building myself to be a good human being, or I'm building myself to be a good career banker or a good career manager. What are my fundamentals to success? And believe in me, right on top of it, write governance and ethical practices. Say that I will do nothing which is not ethically right, because of a very simple reason, that if it is not ethically right, I'm not too sure that it has a very long runway. it will derail somewhere in route. So the business fundamental there doesn't change. Look at the second business fundamental, which will never change. Again, whether it's a business house, individual, whatever, is respect to people. Wherever you are, in whatever profession you are, whatever work that you're doing, please understand that you need to learn to respect people around you. Do not discriminate people by their capability and competence. Do not discriminate people by their looks and otherwise. Do not discriminate people by their authority. So therefore, differentiate between respecting people versus treating people differently. Because if you have a non-performer working for you, you can get rid of that individual for his non-performance, but you should do it respectfully. Because it is not about what you have done to that individual, but it's about what you are propagating to the entire organization as to what your key function of a respect is. Because many performers also watch you on how do you act or react to a situation. So reflect on that how do you respect people? Do you respect people appropriately? Because you need to be respected in the society, in the organization that you belong to, in the friend circle that you represent. Because then and then only there is a growth of career path that can happen to you. So therefore, make sure that you don't miss out on this very basic fundamental. These are fundamentals of any individual or a business, which will never change in any changing environment. Ask the third question as to what process of mine has failed, which has led me to where I am today. Because this COVID intervention disruption which has happened, everyone is talking of a new world will emerge from tomorrow. I have a very different view, and I believe that 1 year from now could be very different. And 1 year from then on could be seeing many of the past practices coming back. Because if the past practices were not bad, why should they not return? Why are we all believing that everything in life is going to be very new from now on? Because everyone is the same. The marketplace is the same. The market players are the same. The consumers are the same. The consumer providing facilities are the same. The people selling the products are the same. The way it is being sold is also almost the same. Why do we all believe that everything in life is going to change? Yes, there will be some changes which will come. I'm not for once advocating that there will be no change. But it also is wrong to believe that nothing of the past will continue into future. They will for sure continue into future. But what of those will continue into future are some of your good practices. Some of your practices which have got you to be where you are today. Right? I think one of those such good practices is, in the current scenario, please do not take an undue advantage of the emerging situation. If you owe money to a banker, you must realize and decide you must pay that money to a banker. You can't hide under the disruption and say, oh, everything is gone wrong for me. I have no money to pay. So therefore, I must be given that waiver. Because don't forget that somebody whom you're talking about it in this fashion is going to accept that reality as you're not able to pay. But you are getting noted in his file as someone who did not repay the installment when it was required to be paid. Look at your future borrowings will suffer. So please understand and reflect on this very seriously. Your current actions will decide your future success. We many times forget and we sometimes believe that your current action is just for your current requirement. But no, your current action actually decides your future. So therefore, whatever current actions you are taking, my dear friend, please bear in mind, it has got a very severe impact into your future. Reflect on this very, very strongly. As you reflect on all of this, you will have to ask yourself a question. How do you regenerate yourself? How do you reboot yourself? Are we going to buckle under this? My belief is, whenever there are such disruptions, always there are two sides to it. One, which tells you that everything is going to go wrong. And another, which tells you that there's going to be emerging new big opportunities. The question that you have to ask yourself is, how are you seeing for yourself the future? If you are a student, you have to ask for yourself a very definitive question, that is education coming to a grinding halt because of this? Or is it a new way of getting educated emerging outside there? And if you get a feeling and if you get this understanding, that you're getting into a new area or a new arena of how to get educated, then prepare yourself for that. That's rebooting, re-energizing yourself to reboot. You have to make sure that you look at everything from an opportunity lens and not from a dooms lens. For heaven's sake, what you have lost is anyway lost. Why are you over and over wanting to look at it? Look at what is in front of you as an emerging opportunity. I mean, we as an organization, I can tell you that, believe in me, the kind of disruptions that we have seen. I work a lot of activity in rural. We run a very large balance sheet in rural India. And just imagine in 2008-9, when demonetization was announced, look at the fate of my business. 2,000 crore monthly collections we do, 90% of the people pay cash because they are all local farmers, local traders, local vehicle user, three-wheeler operators. They will only pay you cash for installment. Look at the fate we had on 8th November when the announcement was made that there is a demonetization. Everyone thought that our business is dead and over from 9th November. They thought a business which is so cash dependent, what would happen? And we said, what is the first decision we will have to take in a situation like this? Is to tell your entire branch network of people that do not collect cash from today. Because this announcement has come, and let us not be found weakness on the governance side or on the regulatory side. So we have to take an extreme bold decision of what we will not do, rather than first worrying about what we will do. Having taken that decision that we will not collect cash, right? Then we waited for things to open up. Then we realized that if people are earning in cash, if they repay in cash, that is not a problem, provided you know what are they earning and how are they earning. So I think from a situation that we are in today, don't worry about imagining everything is going to come to a grinding halt. You please ask for what are the new opportunities that this is going to throw up for consumers. What are the new ways of doing things which are going to be thrown up? And then become extremely relevant for that. Don't force yourself to say, this is my past experience and this is what I will continue to do in future. That is called rigidity, and that will not lead you to anything. Your willingness to reshape yourself with the changing times, your willingness to reshape yourself with the changing needs of the consumer, your willingness to reshape yourself with the needs of the changing regulatory framework and process will help you survive this and become a winner going forward. Just think about it. Because one of the biggest change all of us will have to bring after this is a change of mindset. Because some of your past experience is going to become irrelevant for tomorrow. There is no point in explaining to somebody that in the past this is what was happening, because they will say there is no relevance of the present to the past. So we have to promise ourselves that we will clean up our mind. We will clean up our mind and we will change our mindset. And we will also be willing to look at with open mind the emerging new tomorrow. Only if we are willing to do that, then there is an opportunity. As otherwise, we would be all stuck with explaining something of the past and writing history books about up to 2020, how we were and what happened in 20 and where we vanished. I think we've all built very large businesses, large institutions. We are all individuals with phenomenal capability. And I think we will have this fantastic capability to write for ourselves what we want to do and get to do in the future. It is extremely important that we will have to list out the new skills that would be required for surviving and getting into future. We will all by age have to become younger in our minds. There is no point in all of us saying, I have 25 years experience, 40 years experience. I've run this business for so many years. Because from tomorrow, it's going to be a new beginning. The demands of tomorrow is going to be very different. And therefore, how much are you willing to change yourself? That's going to be extremely important. I think there will be a lot of case studies which will come out of this experience of what all did we go through, and is there another way of handling it? Because today we are handling it live. So we don't have options in front of us. We're just kind of taking one set of decision and trying to go ahead. But 6 months later, 1 year later, when we reflect back on how did we handle 2020, you will realize that these were the 10 things that happened and I did these 3 things, but I could have done another 5 things. That is reflecting on and becoming relevant for tomorrow. I think the education institutions will have to create new courses around how to handle disruptions when they come and disturb you. You will have to list out things that happen during these periods. I mean, whoever thought that all of us can interact with each other sitting in these distances? We always wanted to be crowded into one place. There are merits and demerits of both, but nevertheless, a new format has emerged out of this. I am surprised that every organization, including possibly your own institutions, must also be talking about it. Today, everybody is talking about cost reduction. And if we can reduce cost today, I have a very simple question to ask. Why did we not do it yesterday? Why did we wait for this day to come? If you are able to do it today, it only means that whatever cost you were incurring so far was either a wasteful expenditure or it's an expenditure incurred because of your ability to spend and not a need to spend. So my simple formula is, I am saying, let's get back to spending if there is a need and not because you're capable of. I think that's a basic discipline we will have to bring into our businesses, into our personal lives. I mean, I know of many, many houses, including my own maybe, that every room has a TV and every room has an air conditioner. And if you have 4 or 5 rooms, just imagine you have 5 TVs and 5 air conditioners with 3 people living in that house. Is it need-based or affordability-based? And I think it's completely affordability-based. Now, do you need these kind of facilities at all in life? Ask these kind of simple questions. To me, a bigger solutions come from asking a simple question. The more complicated your question is, the more silly the solution or more non-doable solution will emerge. So when you're stuck with a problem, my dear friend, please ask the most simple question and not most complicated question. Because if you ask a very simple question, you will get a very simple answer which can be executed. So henceforth, we must practice towards affordability and not, we should go towards needability and not affordability. If it is a requirement, please spend. If not, save. Because please understand that these kind of disruptions, when they come and hurt you, and when you're taking decisions on cost rationalization and things like that, you get into an organization or an institution which can suddenly get disengaged. Because there'll be a lot of rumors that will be floating around our organization. There'll be a lot of people who are extremely disturbed. There'll be a lot of personal disturbances in people's life. Who knows who have committed what kind of loans and liabilities? And if there is going to be a pressure on their salaries, how they are going to handle those liabilities. So there is going to be a lot of personal pressure that people are going to go through. So these are times, my dear friend, when I say be relevant for tomorrow, be compassionate to people. Get to people and work very together with people. These are a time where teamwork will get abnormally tested. Because these are times, my very strong belief, these are a time new partnerships will emerge. Who knows, and I am a very strong believer that even competition will partner with each other. Because everyone is trying to address the same problem and not many of them have a solution. So therefore, you may find new partnerships emerging. 2 banks, 2 institutions, 2 educational institutions may come together. These are times to rationalize cost. Why we have to multiply cost? So there may be many, many things you may want to relook and think about. How do we rationalize them? Who do we partner with? How do we use partnership approach? So what if they are my competition? So therefore, when these kind of partnership emerges, what becomes relevant at that stage is your transparency. Whether you and I agree or not, we don't share information very easily with everybody because the fear of competition and the fear of someone else copying what you do is in prime top of your mind and you hold it back. And when you hold back information, what you get back as an outcome of that is a very weak result. Imagine again a very simple example that you go to a doctor and don't transparently tell all your problems. I think the treatment that you get is going to be a very weak treatment because you've not been transparent. And then to blame that, the doctor isn't good or I didn't get the right treatment is a false statement. The real truth is you are not transparent. So my advice would be when you reflect and you're becoming relevant of tomorrow, I think make sure that you bring in transparency in your approach. approach. When you deal with people, when you deal with institutions, when you deal with anyone else out in the market, when you deal with your consumer, be as transparent as you can. Because the need of the hour is to be extremely transparent to get the best result out of it. If you do this, my dear friend, I am reasonably sure that we will all be able to build new businesses. You will have to recreate your business and become extremely strong and be ready for tomorrow's outcome. The challenges are going to be enormous. But one belief you must have very strongly: whatever be your process, whatever be your product, whatever be the pricing capability of your product, I very strongly think people will continue to make the difference at the marketplace. So therefore, we as individuals, we as people will have to recreate ourselves. We will have to re-engage with people ourselves. We will have to become very, very relevant for tomorrow. You have to be top of things. Your knowledge has to be best of all. And therefore, you will become relevant and you will be very much required and you will be consulted for that requirement. These are, my dear friend, unprecedented times. There is no doubt in my mind. But these are also times which will open up phenomenal opportunities. I mean, I can tell you, for us in financial services, if we are lending into vehicles and tractors and SMEs and all kinds of stuff, this is not the loan that people for tomorrow may require for next 6 months. But what would they require is they are going through a very high pressure time and they may require a short-term loan. They may require a loan which they will be wanting to overcome certain responsibilities of theirs to discharge certain liability. And therefore, are we willing to provide them that new product? Are we willing to give them a shorter loan? So these are times where your innovative mindset will have to work. And that innovation that you will bring in will have to become a very relevant product or a relevant service to the consumer. If you're going to just create something which is irrelevant to anyone else, you will be stuck with this. So please create, through any innovation, through your thinking process, please make sure you create products which are relevant for consumers. You provide services which are relevant for consumers. My last bit would be on the knowledge and data. You know, I have this very strong apprehension when people say data is going to be the future gold, future oil, and that's going to decide the future of everyone and all that, which is perfectly right. But you have to ask a basic question: is your data correct? You have to ask a very basic question: how pure is your data? You have to ask a basic question: how reformed is your data? How many times do you refurbish your data? How current are your data? Because if the data is irrelevant, I mean, again, go back to the doctor example. If you go to a doctor and show your blood report, which was taken 1 year back, based on that, if he is going to advise you without looking at when the report was generated, you're going to get a wrong advice. So you have to refurbish your data, my dear friends. Make sure that data in itself is useless unless it is rich in content and unless it is refurbished and current in nature. But data alone, again, is going to be irrelevant. I think data with knowledge is going to be very relevant. So make sure that while you have enough data, do you have enough knowledge to understand the data? If your knowledge is insufficient to comprehend and analyze and understand the data, what would you do with such a data? So please make sure that when all of us are chasing data, first chase for the right data, refurbish that, and then make sure that you have the current data. But more importantly, make sure that you gain sufficient knowledge around it for you to be able to understand and appreciate the data. If you have a rich data and you have a good knowledge, I think the two together is what is going to decide the future for yourself. So whether a student, I mean, there's no point in a student saying, I have got phenomenal reading material. I got one of the best textbooks of the world. So what does it mean? That's just a data point. Do you have the knowledge when you read to understand what does that say? So please make sure that you are extremely relevant for tomorrow by continuously upgrading your knowledge. Your knowledge upgradation has to be phenomenally fast and high. And if you do that, then you are creating a great future for yourself. And this is what every business is going to demand. Every business is going to demand, do you have sufficient knowledge about your consumer? Do you know what your consumer wants? Do you know the consumer wants it when? Do you know how does he want it? Do you know why do they want it? These questions are going to be thrown at us over and over. If you simply say that I have a data of customers who have borrowed last 3 years and he borrows once in 3 years, maybe irrelevant for tomorrow. So make sure that you gain and refurbish and keep upgrading your knowledge over and over and over. That's going to be very relevant. And the last comment would be, whenever you're looking at technology, again, invest in appropriate technology and invest adequately. Don't invest in technology just because somebody tells you that you've got to invest in digital. How does it matter? You may invest in digital, and if there is no user for it, what are you going to do? So please make sure that when I talk of relevant, I think what you have to understand from relevance is, are you appropriately investing? Are you adequately investing? And therefore, are you investing for the benefit of whom? Again and again and again, ask a question. You are investing for whom? Is it going to benefit your consumer? Is it going to benefit your employee? If it is just going to showcase you as a company which has invested thousands of crores in technology, it matters nothing. It's going to take you nowhere. Right? So therefore, when you ask this question on investments in technology, make sure that you ask a question of, are you investing adequately? Are you investing appropriately? And you're investing for whose purpose? For whom are you investing? I think if you get the answers to these questions, I'm sure that you would be doing well. My take on the current situation is definitely things are not easy out in the marketplace. There's a lot of pressure out in the market when it comes to consumer sentiments. Consumers are asking a question, why should I acquire an asset now? Is it a good time to acquire an asset? What if I can delay acquisition of any asset? People don't want to take loans. Banks don't want to give loans. So there is a lot of uncertainty around all of this. But whenever there is so much of uncertainty, it's always seen that new models emerge out of this. And therefore, what we need to have in this hour is absolute patience. What we need in this hour is a lot of relationships and connectivity. What we need in this hour is a lot of engagement with people. I think what we need in this hour is a lot of interaction and coming to a conclusive decision based on multiplied discussions and not unified individual discussions. So get into engagement with people to discuss more about it. Understand what is good to be done. Use options before you select what you need to do, and then look at definitely keeping consumer at the center of everything. My belief has always been, anytime in life, whatever you do, whenever you do, all of us want to create an impact in life. We don't want to do things which doesn't create substantial impact. Whether you do business, whether you're in education, whether you're a student. So if you kind of look at this word impact, it's very simply constituted, right? This word impact is made up of alphabets which have very deep meaning. The I stands for integrity. The M stands for mannerism. The P stands for passion. The A stands for attitude. The C stands for communication, right? And the T stands for teamwork. None of this will ever be missing from any future businesses or from any future action. And if you have these ingredients in your life, you would create impact in whatever you do. I'm very convinced, my dear friend, that these are undoubtedly unprecedented difficult times. But we will all emerge out of it a winner. We must have patience and we must have a belief that we want to create impact in life. And as I said, just look at this word impact and practice all the ingredients of those alphabets that I narrated to you. If you were willing to accept that and work around it, I'm 100% sure that what we will create after that would be something very unique. It would be something very useful, and it will be something very relevant. But before we can create anything of relevance, you have to reflect on what went right, what went wrong. You will have to go deeper and say, how do I re-energize myself? And you will have to reinvent yourself, and you will have to make yourself very relevant. And if you do that, then I think we are all marching into a greater tomorrow to get the best benefit of those emerging opportunities. I think I stop here, and if there are some questions, then I take them. And if there are any clarifications required to be given, I can offer them.
Arul, you can check for some questions.
Sir, there are a lot of questions pouring in. To ask few with the limited time we have. And the first one is, Will corporate partnerships result in mass unemployment and shrinking of opportunities for newer employment and business opportunities?
So if you really talk about it today, and if you say, is it going to shrink employment opportunity? I think one would feel yes, because everyone is in the midst of, re-looking at what can be done. But I want to advise everyone to say, this is not end of the world. This is just beginning of a new world. And therefore, my take on this is new opportunities may emerge. May not be the same opportunity that was existing 1 year back or 2 year back may continue. So new opportunities may emerge. And which is why I keep telling people, continuous upskilling of an individual is necessary in the changing times. Right? Like during our times, we did not wanted to know so much about computerization. But unless we learned that art over a period of time, we would have not survived to remain in employment today. Now, can I write a code? Can I be a computer engineer? May not be. But at least I must know basic use of technology. Right? To that extent, I should be relevant. Right? So I would advise everyone who is worrying about what is future of employment, you rather first worry about what is your skill set to be relevant for tomorrow. If you say, no, I'm educated 5 years back and I'm going to upgrade myself, nothing. Right? I mean, I can tell you another simple way of putting it. If my mother stays with me and she cooked food for us, what we like, typical Indian, South Indian cuisine, let's say. But no sooner my son came into life, right, and as he was growing, he would like South Indian. But if my mother unbelieved to give him something little more modernized today, right, she would be an irrelevant grandmother for him. He would say that I'm not getting the food that I require. So she also has learned possibly to do little of pizzas of the world, right? So if the grandmothers at home can learn new skills of cooking to become relevant for the family, what is stopping us to become relevant for the industry of tomorrow? So educate yourself continuously with new skills. You will find multiple opportunities to survive.
So there's another interesting question which has come up. Would just removing the Chinese app hurt China economically?
I don't think so. I mean, we are all overestimating certain things because the problem has come from there and come and hurt us. So people say, remove this app, remove that, remove this and all that. I think once the world becomes little more normalized, once again, everyone will forget what happened, from where it emerged, what happened and all that. Once again, we'll start chasing cost. Once again, we'll start chasing productivity. Once again, we'll just start chasing things which are good and necessary. And then everything will fall back into some kind of a normalcy. I mean, you go back into history, many times, many people, many individuals, many countries, many groups would have been boycotted. And they've all bounced back in some way or the other in different ways. So I don't think the Chinese economy is so fragile to get impacted just by, one such change, because they know how to do more things and possibly they know how to survive in a bigger world.
Thank you, sir. So do you think that Atmanirbhar Bharat, that is the vision of our Pradhan Mantri, really boost the economy and help the rural India to revive back and push the economy towards a brighter one?
So I think it's a great opportunity to probably create more cities. It's a great opportunity to create, bigger opportunities out in the rural market, more manufacturing setup, SME setups, all kinds of stuff can be done. And we can possibly become exporting country on certain goods and services and can take away from other countries possibly. We can also start producing things in different locations at lower price and can make it more cost efficient. But I think, these kind of broader themes will need a very detailed execution plan and process around it, and must be very tight on timelines. Otherwise, we can slip out on timelines and it can again become too late before we start. So, these are great themes and ideas which are absolutely necessary for our tomorrow. But what urgently needs to be done around this is, as I said, put down a very, very strong process to execute and a very tight timelines to execute, and make it very, very attractive for people to go and participate. I mean, if I am told that you can come and set up a factory in a rural India, this is how power will be provided to you, labor would be provided to you, logistics will be provided to you. this would be the concessions you get, this is how you will be cost rational, then I would think I must jump into it and invest. Right? So I think it requires for an overall ecosystem change, overall approach towards setting up of an industry as a process change, right? But must work on a very tight timeline.
Sir, if you could allow 10 more minutes, I have few more questions coming in. With your kind permission, can I take them?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. Sir, there's this question that what additional skills would you require in an aspirant if he wishes to take a job and you are in the interview panel?
I think I said that also. First and foremost is don't come and talk in interview on any subject or any words for which you do not know the deeper meaning. You know, I've seen many times in a panel when we interview students, when we ask them, what do you want to do in financial services? They say, we want to be in mergers and acquisition. We want to be in so and so. Then we ask them, can you just explain to me what do you mean by mergers and acquisition? Then they're just blinking. They're just blinking. They have heard it from someone. Somebody has told them that it's a great opportunity if you're in M&A, right? So they just come and say. I think my humble request to beginners at least is your singular objective should be that I must get associated with a good brand as an organization, and a brand not by name or bigness, but a brand which is good at teaching people who are beginners, so that I learn the art of surviving in an employment and become relevant for future, right? But if you're looking for remuneration as your first requirement when you take up an employment, then you may end up wrongly. If you look at your visiting card to reflect a name which is very attractive, then you become irrelevant, right? And I know that the students come under peer pressure because nobody possibly tells the truth to the another student, right? One student would say, oh, I have been given one of the best jobs in my company. You know, these are the things that's given to me. They would have heard it somewhere and then they will narrate. The other student comes under pressure saying, oh, he or she has got such a wonderful, so I must chase similarly. I think you make your objective very clear. Your objective is a long-term career and not immediate employment. Your objective has to be long-term career. So therefore, please, in an interview, instead of overselling yourself and getting unnecessarily, muddled by the interviewer, you simply say, I want to take up an employment which allows me to learn under your leadership or your team's leadership and can make me a leader like you over a period of time.
Students, I think this is the most important takeaway from this session, the success mantra, that you have to have a humble beginning and it takes years to build a career. From what I know and I gathered from Sir's CV is that he just started as an intern in Mahindra & Mahindra and he was controlling the costs, sir, if I'm not wrong.
That's right. So,
yeah.
And we've not joined this company because we knew somebody there, right? We also went through the selection process. And yes, you have to demonstrate and look at someone in your organization whom you idealize as, I want to become so-and-so, right? So just if you give me half a second, in my case, I looked at my boss then, and he was a senior most person in the department where I was working. And I saw he was the first employee who walked into the organization every day. I promised myself that I will start coming to the office before him. So if he came at 8:40, I used to land up at 8:35. He spotted me as someone who started coming before him, and believe in me, without my asking him or without his telling me, he was mentoring me, which I didn't even realize. Because at 8:35, when he saw me, he took interest in me to find out, why do I come early? Right? So he started that chat with me. Once he started chatting with me, he became a little more closer and possibly he realized my capability. Then he started giving me little more work or a different work. Then he became my ambassador to talk to others in the department to say that, you can try and utilize this guy. He is good at it. Right? So he started mentoring me. Right? So my simple advice to people would be, choose someone in the organization that you join and look at that person's growth story and idealize that person and say, what are the good things that he did can I do? And you can climb the ladder.
Thank you. Sir, can I take two questions on the economic front? One is, do you believe India should start or initiate unemployment allowance and better social security measures?
I mean, this is, hugely debatable as yes and no. The simple reason is, it's not about can you start. It's about how do you fund it and how do you sustain it, right? And then, what is the percentage of population, under what criteria do you want to cover them in, right? So unless you have a very strong resourcing capability, either through your tax measures or through your social contribution measures, you cannot sustain these kind of things. I mean, whosoever has asked this question, why don't they try and run this in their own families and see who are the family members who requires this kind of support, or their mates and drivers and everyone else associated with them, and let them ask this simple question: can I run a social program for people I am associated with within my family? The first question you will ask is, I don't have that kind of a resource, right? You will say that I have so much of future commitment. How do I divert funds for that, right? Then you will say, I have my own people who are yet to progress. So how do I give it to others, right? So I think these are great ideas, but it requires a very deep-rooted fundamental changes. And for that, as a country itself, you have to be fundamentally above certain category of richness, right? Otherwise, where is the resource to support all of this?
Sir, could you put some light on the NBFC crisis that is happening around?
So I don't know what exactly somebody means by crisis, but one thing I must tell you that I'm the chairman of the Federation of NBFCs, which is the FIDC, Finance Industry Development Corporation. And, I can tell you that NBFCs are of different categories within NBFC. Small, medium, large is one category. Asset financing, non-asset is the other category. Housing, microfinance, vehicle financing kind of NBFCs are one, right? Investment banking NBFC. So there are different categories. Typically, the pressure point for NBFCs at all point of time is going to be adequate capital and enough of liquidity, because that's their raw material. Unfortunately, everyone focuses on the asset side of the balance sheet because the NPAs come from there, and people think because of the NPA, NBFCs fail or NBFCs don't do right. Whosoever has asked this question, and for everyone else who is wanting to hear this answer, no NBFCs or no financial services ever will shut shop from asset side. They will shut shop, if at all, only from liability side, either because they are poorly capitalized or very, very poorly borrowed. Because if you borrow short-term money and do long-term business, you will get stuck. The other reason why NBFCs will ever shut down will be because of very poor governance and practices. If you do something wrong, right, you will get stuck in financial markets. So therefore, the current crisis of an NBFC is emerging from the liability side, where the availability of funds for onward lending is insufficient. So the government and the Reserve Bank of India are taking a lot of steps to make that available. But the banking system is very uncomfortable given the current scenario, and therefore they are not very easily providing funds to every NBFC, and that's building pressure on certain NBFCs. My own take is they are a very important element of the economic system, and they would emerge a winner over a period of time.
Sir, do you see a change in the community engagement during this COVID and post it?
I don't know what exactly where the community engagement would be, but definitely I see a lot of people willing to step forward and wanting to help everybody. Right? I'm sure all of us, wherever in whichever societies we are living, I think everyone is trying to be as helpful as they can without interacting with people. Right? So, people are very, I think the socializing part of it will move away and the helping part of it would step in. Right? And that is surely visible. Like, I mean, all of us want to pay our mates and drivers and everyone else because we feel sorry for them as to it is not something caused by their inefficiency, it's a systemic inefficiency, right? So to that extent, definitely yes. But then, things like public places, we are not visiting temples and marriages and things like that. Will that take away the socializing part of it, and therefore the community feeling decline? Will it happen after some time or not? I am nobody to guess that. But definitely the feeling, emotional feeling for others and the need to help others and wanting to be available as a help to others is definitely going on.
The last and final question. Since I'm from the academic fraternity, as teachers, how do we make our students ready for newer employment opportunities and challenging scenarios ahead?
So if you don't mind, my answer will be a little more blunt. I think the first question is, are the teachers and professors relevant? Right? After you've taken up your teaching career, have you done induction back in the industry? Have you understood what are the current needs of the industry from the students? So wherever I go and speak, I tell them, as much as the students have to do intern, please make sure once in a year or once in 2 years, even the professors go for 2 months of intern with organization and spend time in the subject that they are teaching and find out what's happening in the industry around that, right? Then your ability to come back and understand the students and guide them goes substantially high, right? But my other take would be, please set your students, tie up with as many industry as you can, and don't run a formal intern 2 months program and all that, right? If you're any subject you take, let's take accounting subject for a matter, right? And if Ind AS has been introduced in the country, right? Teaching in the class, they may not absorb what Ind AS is all about, right? Indian accounting standards, what does that mean? So engage with some audit firm, take them to and let them spend about a week with the audit firm and let them teach them about it. So I think while what you teach in the classroom may continue, but pull out a lot of time every day or every week and engage with the industry on a big time basis and get them to go to different industry to practically see what they learn, how is it being put to practice, right? Because the mind needs to open up and starts to learn by seeing what they are seeing, right? Because they learn and then by the time they go to see, everything would have changed in between. So as you learn, if you see, I think your ability to absorb and connect substantially goes up. So you must make a list of, let's say, 300 companies. If your college is working 250 days for a minute, let's imagine, make a list of 250 companies and go even to very, very small SMEs. They can teach you fantastic leadership skills. So make a list of 250 companies and make a list of 200 things that you want your students to learn. Either leadership, accounting, treasury, controls, budgeting, cost controls, HR practices, all kinds of marketing, advertising, product positioning, everything, right? Then you have 200 companies, 200 things to learn, right? On a 200-day basis. Then you rotate this program to say, okay, today this 10 students will go and do this. And then create student community. That if 10 of us have gone to Mahindra and have learned about cost control, we must come and give a lecture to the students on cost control. What did we see when we went for this study? Similarly, somebody goes and see brand positioning or product positioning, they will come back and talk about it. I think you create a community within your organization on these 200 subjects, learn from 200 companies in 200 days by 2,000 people.
Thank you, sir, for that advice. And from that advice, I could just understand one thing, that great leaders think alike, because this has been our mantra of our principal ma'am also at the college. And she's always been reinstigating that please upgrade yourself. If you're not upgrading, you are dead in the market. So you all think alike, and that's what we should always follow. So thank you so much, sir, for that question and answer session. Guys, he was the man who was pushing the boundaries in the world of uncertainty, political opinion, and economic upheaval. Thank you so much, sir. Now over to Rupal, ma'am.
What does that chart indicator meant? People are feeling confident, something came up there, something popped up. What's next? Have we done?
Rupal, Parul, you only concluded. Rupal not available.
Yes, ma'am, no problem. Sir, thank you so much for giving us an enlightening session, sharing your leadership experiences and the inspiring way in which you taught us so many new things. And thanks to that success mantra you gave to all our students. I would now request Sachin Kamli, sir, as Vice Principal, to please propose a vote of thanks for the session. Sachin sir.
Thank you, Parul ma'am. Honorable Principal, respected guests and all the participants. I deemed it a great honor and privilege to propose a vote of thanks to this illuminating session on reflect, reboot, recreate, and be relevant for tomorrow. I owe special gratitude to our guest speaker, Mr. Ramesh Iyer, who, despite of his busy schedule, spared valuable time for today's session. My heartfelt thanks to our management, Principal Madam, for providing continuous support to organize this distinguished webinar. And extended thanks to the technical team and my esteemed participants for making this session a success. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. Thank you,
sir.
everyone.
Thank you very much.
All the very best to everyone. Take care. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.